Okay, well, as is the case, usually, I am a little bit late getting the stream started. I will tell you all about that and um, how that came about. But first off, just want to thank you guys for taking the time to spend some of your evening with me. I am Stephen Reichert, and this is Rowan Ridge Farm. We're raising heritage hogs on pasture, even when the weather is cold and snowy and sub-zero. Very unpleasant. That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit in tonight's stream. And in addition to the many other things that you may know about me, I have type 1 diabetes. So occasionally, medicine, life will throw a curveball at me, and my blood sugar is a little bit low. So I have a little bit of a snack to bring things up. And as you may or may not be able to tell if you've been around different streams here, a little bit different setup, and that carries with it some challenges and whatnot. So I apologize for that. It kind of makes things a little bit squirrely. Oh, there is, we got Blue Wagon Farm. I have not seen Blue Wagon Farm here previously. I see Bellino's Bounty. Hey guys, I'm glad to have everybody here. And so first of all, a little, I'll call it housekeeping, because I don't have a very rigorous plan for tonight's stream. I just want to be able to hop in here and chat with you guys a little bit and see how the weather's treating you all. As you may have noticed, we are getting pretty close to the 1,000 subscriber mark, which is kind of a significant milestone and I apologize, I have my phone here, and due to the logistics of the way everything is set up here, I used to stream from the camera on my computer, and so I could kind of manage chats and do the streaming all in one kind of one fell swoop. But the way it's set up now, my camera, I'm using a separate camera so that I can get 4K, which I'll check and you guys can let me know, but 4K should be available in your resolution if the stream is working properly, which I did a test stream on an unlisted stream just to see, and it seemed like it was working, but I absolutely detest how difficult all this is. It shouldn't be so difficult, but it is. So here we are. But anyways, the camera is between me and the computer. So actually physically getting over the camera to the computer would be a real ugly mess. So I am going to hop in on my own live stream here and turn the volume down so I'm not like doubling up. But basically this will allow me to read the chat. Anyways, I'm going to read the chat and I'm going to respond to everybody's messages, because you guys are really going to be the ones driving the bus, so to speak, this evening, to make up for the fact that I don't have a very rigorous outline for what we're going to be doing tonight. But we're getting close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and so anybody who is not currently subscribed, I would love it if you go ahead and subscribe so that we can kind of close that loop and we get a little bit closer to 1,000, and we can keep doing more of these streams, more of our videos. And I'll tell you about some videos that I'm working on once we kind of get through this initial housekeeping. But I've been trying to think of like what would be a cool way to celebrate passing 1,000 subscribers, because that's a big milestone. And I started my first video on this channel, I think was like late March last year, so that's pretty cool. I know that I haven't been very diligent about uploading and putting stuff on here. I've been trying to do what I can, excuse me, with the time that I have available. And this past year, I have been working on some like professional goals in my medicine career, to be able to go from, which is something I've already done, but just in retrospect, this past year I went from being a nurse on the floor, meaning like bedside care, which is very important, and it's a very hard skill. But I kind of went from bedside nursing to a specialty that I was able to, with the help and cooperation of my boss, who's a lovely person, and she trusts me and gives me a lot of bandwidth to do this stuff. But basically, I got to carve out a position for myself as a diabetes educator, which is right in my wheelhouse, since I've lived with type 1 diabetes for the last 30 years. And so I've had a lot going on, haven't been able to really put the hammer down, but the last maybe 6 months or so, maybe 4 months really, actually, since kind of September, I've been really trying to, kind of round that curve as we've trying to go from third base to home, to really kind of get the channel monetized and start moving forward. And so I appreciate those of you guys who've subscribed in the past and that are here, that are bearing with me. And I've been trying to think what would be a cool way to celebrate so that I can get you guys involved. And what I was thinking is, I'm going to make a post where I'm going to announce this, but basically the goal is that you're going to give me a date that you think that subscriber number 1000 is going to happen, and whoever gets that date right, I will send you a Rowan Ridge Farm coffee mug, and these are otherwise about 25 bucks a piece, obviously plus shipping, so that there's a little bit of value. These are really nice, solid ceramic coffee mugs. I'm a coffee mug snob, in the event that we haven't had a chance to talk about that here yet. And so I wanted to do something that would be have a little bit of value, that would be a little bit special. And so I'm going to put up a post. I mean, if you guys are already in here, you can drop it in the chat, or you can make sure that I have a record of it. Ideally, a comment on the video would probably be ideal, because I think the comments are have a little more longevity. But give me the date that you think we're going to cross that milestone and go get our 1000th subscriber. Right now, last I checked, we were at 968. So what day, how long do you think it's going to be before we get, I'm going to test my math skills, going to show off how bad I am at math, 32 more subs. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. And then whoever gets that date right, I'll mail you one of these coffee cups, and you can take it for a spin. Bellino's Bounty, Mike has, well, he got a couple of these from me. I'm hoping that you were able to keep one for yourself, but you can tell folks what it feels like in hand. It's heavy. I'll say that it's heavy. It's like proper stoneware. And Sunset Hill, I don't know if any of you guys are coffee mug snobs, but Sunset Hill Stoneware, they're the ones that make these, that make cups for like 9 Line and Zero Foxtrot. They make them for a cup. I think they might even make them for Black Rifle, but kind of like the Vet Bro or Bro Vet, some of those Bro Vet companies that have like the t-shirts and stuff. I've patronized some of those. That's how I found their stuff, and I just love their cups. I'm going to get another round of cups done from them pretty soon. Anyways, that's what we're up to. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a little bit. Okay, Trey Finley, 3769, getting the wood stove stoked up and fired for tonight. That is an excellent life decision. We just got a mini split installed here in the porch, which is kind of my area here where I'm doing my streams. And the porch used to be the coldest part of the house, because it's kind of like a porch with windows, like I guess back in the day you would call this like a solarium or a sunroom. And that also converts very quickly to like a lose heat room in the wintertime. And we got a mini split in here, so the house now has oil heat for some of the water, propane for some of the house and a lot of the appliances. We have electrical heat, and also now wood stove. So we're trying to really diversify what we're doing heating wise, and eventually I'm going to get this place properly buttoned up so that we only have like one type of heat. So far, I got to say, I really like the mini split. We don't have much need for the mini split to function as AC in the summer, because The house is really well insulated, so in the summertime, the bottom like part of the house where everybody kind of does most of their living throughout the day stays very comfortable, even in like, you know, 85, 90-degree weather, which we do get those temps up here in New Hampshire. And in the wintertime, without breaking a sweat in terms of the bill, the mini split has been doing a great job and taking some of the pressure off of the propane. And today was the first time that I fired up the wood stove because with the baby, we got a little guy, newborn. He just turned 2 months. Time really flies because I remember announcing that here on the channel. The little guy just turned 2 months, and I want to be careful not like going too crazy with burning stuff, and everybody's already sick and got respiratory stuff, so I don't want to add anything to that complication. But my wife, bless her heart, she cleaned out the wood stove so that everything is smooth sailing there, and we got that going last night. And now it's like a sauna upstairs, which we're gonna have to open a window or turn on the AC. So that's the way it is. We're always either too hot or too cold or something. But this time of year, the weather is really gnarly. So yeah, glad that you're getting the wood stove going there, Finley. Hey Ginger, hey you said, hey everyone, I'm so jealous of your snow. Whereabouts are you at, Ginger, and why do you not have snow? I think you've told me this. I think you might be in the Southwest. Don't mind me, my memory is terrible. It's Emma, hello, commented on one of your vids. I do remember, yes, I did the live stream trying to give you info about I even looked up the, I forget the name of the company that was providing you with your pigs, but yeah, I do remember you. Cool. Well, that's awesome. Good to see you in here. I'm happy you're sticking around. Blue Wagon says, I have a personal account that I typically use. I created a farm account recently to keep things separate. And ironically, or maybe not so ironically, that is part of the reason why I was late to the Stram tonight, because of the fact that Google is trying to make me validate and sign in and like verify everything from 10 different ways. And it's like, dude, just let me go live. Like nobody's cares about my channel and is trying to poach my identity. People are trying to get far away from me to avoid being confused with me. But here we are. And Chris is in the chat from Alaska. And Chris says, Ginger, you're welcome to have some of my snow. 18 to 24 inches, finest champagne quality snow. We have really fine, because everything has stayed cold throughout this snowstorm. Like usually we get kind of a warming as the snow falls. By the time the snow is done, it's kind of like in the higher 20s, and then the snow gets a little heavier and kind of melts down and whatnot. This snow, it's still going. We've got about 16 inches right now, and it's supposed to stop tomorrow afternoon at some point, which is part of the reason why I did not, as you may or may not be able to tell, I didn't prioritize getting out and rolling around in the driveway with the tractor and doing like a preliminary scrape. I'm going to let it all finish, and then I'm going to go out there and just be miserable on the tractor, and that'll happen tomorrow. Ironically, I also made the decision not to go out and try to feed my pigs that are on the pasture, because they have not been out of the huts. They're little porta huts all day. They've been just like hanging out in the huts, and I figure rather than get them out and then have them get all wet and then trample everything back into the huts and then be kind of fed but wet, I'd rather keep them a little bit hungry. We'll feed them again tomorrow. I fed them extra yesterday anyways. Rather prioritize the dryness, and I think that's kind of the way I've decided to go on that. Oh, Emma's got to go. Sorry, Emma. Good to see you. God bless as well. And let's see. Yeah, Emma's the White Rooster Cattle Company. Oh, good. You're back. Well, God bless anyways. Here you are. Oh, Ginger's in Washington. That's right. I remember you were on one of the streams we were talking about that. Missing the snow this year. Oh, we got Emma's in Washington too. We got a whole group of folks from Washington. So cool. So I am I've spent some of my free time today working on the video that I posted about yesterday. Just kind of dealing with what we do with the pigs and how we deal with like waterers that get frozen and kind of managing some of the animals. And so I'm about a quarter of the way through that video because there's a lot to go through because I shot a bunch more than what I actually need. And while that helps me to have a variety of stuff that I need on the back end while I'm editing, that's, all well and good, it does make for a little bit of a tedious process doing the editing and also trying to keep the kids and all that buttoned up throughout the day. So I still have a little bit more to go on that, but I'm looking forward to getting that out there because I've had to I shot everything last night, and then today I've been out of the house and like driving around a couple of times. So I took a little bit more video just to kind of get the full impact of the snowfall on what we're doing, because up until last night everything was pretty minimal. We had like maybe an inch or two of snow on the ground because everything melted off. We were like up to almost 50 degrees a couple of weeks ago, and now last night we were down negative 10-ish. And then today we kind of came up, and I think tonight we're going to be around like 0-ish, and then it's going to be kind of in that single digit space for about the next week. So to be fair, this is New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, it does get cold. And so this kind of weather, while not like commonplace throughout the winter, is kind of par for the course. And it does make things a little bit more complicated, a little bit more tedious, especially with the water. But assuming, like, normally the way it goes up here, and I hope for your sake, in where you guys are watching from as well, normally we either have wind and cold, or we have snow and precipitation. We don't usually, pardon me while I yell at my cat. Hey, Stitch, what are you doing up there? You just ate like a bowl of macaroni. I have a trash panda cat that likes to eat she's developed a bad habit for groceries. And so now it's always a battle whenever she's in the house. She's always trying to like eat our food now because she discovered that it tastes good. And my wife and I have been in this like project battle, call it whatever you want, where we're trying to get her out into the barn and have her redirect some of her enthusiasm for get off of my desk, you dingus. Get off before I have to say words that are going to get me banned off YouTube. Okay. Yeah, and she thinks that she's smooth, and it's one of the most irritating things that I've dealt with animals, when you have a cat who thinks she's smooth and turns out to be really clumsy, and she always comes and knocks stuff over, and it's like, oops, sorry. Like, she always does this to me in the barn. I'll put my drink down on something, and then I turn my back, and then she comes along and like, oops, sorry, I just knocked your Red Bull over. Now it's just like, slushy on the ground and mixed in with the pig crap and the sawdust. So we don't see eye to eye, but ironically, she's kind of been handy for disposing of some of the food, because like the little ones, they're like, oh, I want this, I want a sandwich, I want macaroni and cheese. It's like, okay, well, fair enough, so make it. And then they eat 3 bites and they're like, yeah, that was great, thanks, I'm done. And then they still have like 90% of it left in the bowl. So when the cats come in, they get to share a little bit of that. And they need to do better with the rats, though. Honestly, the rats are just way too good, way too prolific in the barn. I posted the thing, I think, on the channel here the other day of the mouse that like was in my shop, my butcher shop actually, which there's no meat in there, so they're welcome to run around on the floor. But basically, mouse got in, thought it was going to have a grand old time, and wound up freezing to death. So that's kind of where we're at. Chris said, I came from Western Washington, familiar with the wet snow followed by rain last year. Ooh, that sounds awful. Man, I'm sorry. Last year I was there, 2021. We got 12 plus inches in 24 hours, and I was taking 6-inch limbs out of the trees. Man, every time I think that I need to complain about my weather up here in New Hampshire, I hear from other people, and I'm just like, oh man, we actually don't have it bad up here at all. So yeah. Hope you guys are getting through the weather with what it's dealing for you guys. That's Burley. generally, like I was saying, we kind of separate out the types of bad weather so we don't get the heterosis, if you will, or hybrid vigor of two different types of bad weather like rolled into one. Sometimes it'll happen. Like with this storm system, we've had, as the storm system came in, it was dry, but we had a lot of wind. Then the wind stopped and the temperature dropped. And then the temperature kind of now is going back up a little bit, but not too far, going up to like zero-ish from the negatives. Actually, let me see what the weather's doing out there right now, temperature-wise. It was like above, it was above zero. Yeah, it's 1 degree right now, so that's not terrible. Um, that's kind of where we were most of the day. And bearing that in mind, now it's dumping snow, and then the snow's going to end, and it'll go up a little bit more. And we'll have some up and down stuff. I got the feed truck coming at the end of the week, so I do have to actually get the driveway really squared away because they're not going to be happy trying to get a big, triple axle feed truck up here. I mean, they did it last time. They did a good job of it, but I had to spend a little money to get some sanding done, so that's going to need to happen. Emma says, I miss how much snow we got that one time. I'm only 14, so it was like a dream for me back then. But if I got what we had then, right now, I'd be pretty annoyed with all the extra chores. Good evening, Secret Noise. No pictures. Good to see you in the chat here tonight. The extra work with the snow, I remember when I was about your age, Emma, the only chores that I really had to speak of that came with the snow was doing a little bit of extra shoveling, and other than that, it wasn't too bad. And now there's just chores upon chores upon chores, and so I detest the snow. But days like today where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to let the pigs do their feral thing and kind of fend for themselves. They need to just lay low, stay put. I don't hear them banging around outside. I've been watching all day. They've been staying in their porta huts. I'm going to just trust them that they know what to do, and they are going to hang out down in the pasture where they belong, and I'm going to hang out up here in the house where I belong. Tomorrow I'm going to spend, I'll get the overage of chores tomorrow, and we'll go that way. But otherwise, we got to take a little bit of take the foot off the gas a little bit. I know, Chris, you commented on the post that I made earlier. We can get in and out, no problem. 4-wheel drive on the truck, and the snow is light, and I don't think that we really have anything to worry about unless we got over 2 feet. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere near that, even by tomorrow once it slows down. I mean, it's already kind of slowed down a little bit. So we're probably like 16, 18 inches right now, and then we'll probably get another inch or two in the next however many hours, 12 hours or so, until it knocks off. And then we should have a clear window to get everything cleaned up. Secret Noise, no picture, says we are 6 inches here in the mountains of Vermont at the moment. We're going to get another 7 tomorrow. Wow, that is interesting. 6 inches. I mean, that's crazy. Crazy work. By the way, did any of you guys? Yeah, it says we got 2 inches more coming tonight, 2 inches tomorrow, so we're about 4 inches. So I might be a little bit heavy on my estimation. We might be only like a little over a foot. Guys, did any of you have a chance to watch, and it's okay if you didn't, but did any of you have a chance to watch the interview that I did with Zeb Boykin on his channel there? The bacon cheeseburger nationalist shtick, trying that out a little bit with his channel. I found Zeb's channel through, and I'll link that down in the description once everything is processed. Otherwise, you can scroll back if you want earlier time-wise. You can scroll back through my posts and see the announcement where I linked his live stream, and you can find it that way. But Zeb's a new friend on YouTube, and my first official collaboration, which he was very gracious to help out with. He has a much bigger channel than I do, and he graciously hosted me so that I could pop in and talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of the agricultural component of what we're doing, and we actually only scratched the surface on his stream because he was actually asking relevant questions about farming and agriculture and raising pigs, which I thought we were going to get more into like the political and the social elements where that stuff touches what I do or what we do. And so that's going to probably be another stream at some point, but it's been interesting. I'll scratch the surface of that myself here as well, because if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, it was a good episode, a lot of good info, some stuff that you guys might not know about me and kind of my background, how I got into farming and some of that stuff. So I scroll through my stuff and watch that if you haven't yet, and give him a sub and a like. But back to the weather. Secret Noise says water in the cold is the most difficult part of winter freezing chores. One that once it's figured out, it's not so difficult. Yeah, I go over this a little bit in the video that I'm working on. In a lot of ways, I think the pigs that are outside, at least for my property, and again, everything is so different because Secret Noise, you and I probably have some similarities because we're relatively close, and I know some of you other folks are also close to me in New Hampshire, and I didn't even realize it because I don't know exactly where everybody's coming from. But we're relatively close. I know you're over the border in the People's Republic of Vermont. And as a result, we share some of the same climate and ecosystem, but then there's also some things like you're saying you only got like 7 inches so far. We have almost twice that here. And so it's crazy how that stuff goes. But the water, for me, on my property, I have a decent amount of runoff that even when it's cold, I still have water at like negative temperatures. I have water coming down off the mountain, and it has not yet been so cold. I probably am tempting fate by saying this, but it hasn't yet been so cold that the runoff has been shut off by the cold temps. I think what it comes down to is not having too much runoff, or I'm sorry, too much cold temps consistently, such that the runoff just completely stops. And I have had the pigs out on the pasture when everything was frozen up and they just eat snow. So in terms of like ideal circumstances for the pigs, the cold makes some real irritating challenges. Like I was out there with the blowtorch yesterday because the nipple drinkers on the waters inside the barn where the pigs don't have access to the water, my lactating sows, they're kind of like stuck there chewing on the nipple on the barrel, and it's frozen solid. So had to kind of say, okay, girls, like this is your time to drink. I'm going to take the blowtorch, thaw it out. You get in there, drink as much as you can, as much as you want, and then once you stop drinking and you leave it alone for 10 minutes, that's going to be it for your water, because like everything inside the barrel is still liquid, but the nipple, because it's extended away and it's metal, that freezes up. And I'd be, very interested to hear if anybody has a good solution for that. Normally, when we're down into single digits, it is okay and it still stays open and it doesn't freeze up. But once we're down in the negative temps, that's where it kind of turns into a problem. The pigs on the pasture, they can still get runoff, they can still eat snow, and so I kind of let them, do the best that they can with everything. And but Chris says now in the interior of Alaska, 2 feet of powder feels like nothing. Way nicer to shovel. Amen to that. That is so true. And I'm like, since I've kind of gotten into my 40s, like the old age truck hit me right around age 41. And this was before I was doing anything on YouTube, but I had a hypoglycemia situation in the morning. I kind of broke my ankle in the kitchen. I've never broken a bone in my life before. I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I've been all over the world, climbing mountains, alpinism, ice climbing, rock climbing, jumping off of stuff, doing all kinds of silly stuff that I probably deserved to break something just for my what do the kids call it these days, the FAFO, the FAFO type of thing. I should have paid my tax, but I broke my ankle in my kitchen trying to prepare a cup of coffee, because I was hypoglycemic, trying to get downstairs, get a little something, put together for breakfast. And um, hard to explain. It's kind of like when you have a short in the wiring in your brain, and I think it is actually electrical. And basically, like my legs just kind of like turned off for a second, and I just kind of collapsed in a pile. And ironically, I broke both ends of my tibia, which is like the smaller of the two bones in your lower leg. So broke the tip off the top and kind of broke it right a couple inches up from the bottom. And the docs were all scratching their heads once I eventually went in and got x-rayed, because I could still carry feed bags, because the fibula, sorry, it's been a while since I've taken the A&P classes. The bigger bone was still intact, so I was walking on that, and it was like it hurt a little bit, but I just kind of kept everything straight up and down. I was carrying feeding the pigs. I was like, nah, I'll be okay. I told my boss, it's like, I need like a week off of work because my ankle's goofed up. I think it's just sprained bad. I'll be all right. Turns out I broke it. I was going somewhere with that. But anyways, in the process of doing that, oh yeah, the old age truck. It was like everything up till that point, I never thought about, didn't have aches, pains. Now I cannot get up or sit down without like making a noise. And I do it subconsciously now. It's like, this is kind of like crossing that Rubicon into old guyhood, where now like I'm kind of boomer maxing. And I stand up, like, ugh, sit down, same thing. And it's like, sometimes I hear myself and I was like, oh geez, I didn't mean to do that, but now here I am, like grunting and everything's creaking and all that stuff. So that's how we're at. All right, let's see. Everybody's chatting a little bit, and I'm getting left behind here. But yeah, in the spring, just to finish out what Chris was saying, in the spring the vehicles get stuck, and yeah, right now we're lucky. I'm trying to keep the driveway like scraped down to the gravel every single time, so that there is no hard pack, because a hard pack always gets icy, because we'll get little temperature fluctuations and it just packs down and gets slicker than goose shit. And then trying to walk it, because that steep section, it's like a steep hairpin turn on the drive. Like all the most difficult parts of navigating a driveway all like coincide in this one like 20-foot section that is both a hairpin turn and quite steep, all in one spot. So that always ices up, and I'm trying to really do my best not to overdo going up and down that with a tractor, because I don't want to pack it down more, but I want to get it nice and clean so that I can keep it clean for the next week, so that I can get the feed truck in there, so they'll be squared away with that. Yeah, it's a lot of nonsense. Ginger says, sorry, I'm a little quiet making pizza for the fam while I listen. Well, hey, that's awesome. Lucky fam. Like, keep it up. My wife's been making chicken wings, and she's been doing a whole bunch of cooking and stuff on and off, and I've been the recipient of that. She gave me a little bit of rice and beans and some of her steak. So it's you're doing the Lord's work there, Ginger. So keep that up. Thank you for doing that. Chris says, having a 3/4 ton truck slide off the driveway and go into the axles really sucks. Awesome. Thanks, Rita. I'm glad you got a chance to listen to that podcast. Yeah, Zeb's an interesting guy. They got an interesting thing going there. I feel like I like Zeb a lot personally. He has, like, his audience has attracted kind of black-pilled younger men, and I feel like, I mean, obviously this channel is about pigs and farming-ish, I mean, because that's what I do, but at the same time, when I look at what got me into farming and got me interested in pigs, the family component and the social component is something that I can't really separate from what I'm doing with the animals, because it's all kind of baked into the same cake. And so when I'm out there in the barn and I'm kicking pig turds around, to put it nicely, I will be listening to different things. So I listen to a little bit of like, what's Andrew Tate saying? I used to listen to Tim Pool, but Tim Pool and I kind of have beef with Tim Pool. Not that he knows or cares, because obviously, whatever. But I don't listen to Tim Pool out of spite. I'll say that. I listen to people that I disagree with, like Ben Shapiro. I listen to other people that I disagree with, like the Young Turks. Majority Report, I think, Sam Cedar. Sometimes I'll listen to him. Sometimes I listen to Sneeko, a little bit of Fuentes. And basically, my angle is I can agree with some stuff that everybody says. I also find some stuff to be like, nah, I don't, nah. Sorry, I'm kind of oppositional. I like to argue. And so for that reason, I'll listen to people that I disagree with just so that I can like pause the video and then yell at them while I'm in the barn. And not really yell, but kind of rant to the pigs. And the pigs are, they're good listeners, let's say, most of the time. Um, so I feel like a lot of what I want to say is directed towards young men that are kind of hopeless and washed up and kind of like fed up with what they see in society. And then they have kind of two options. They can look at the commentary that generally seems to come from the left, which is you're a colonizer, you're evil, you're bad, you're a misogynist, you're all these ists, and you're participating in all these isms that make you bad and in need of just like apologizing for your existence and the whole idea of building a culture and a family and a future. If you even want that or articulate that, you are a terrible person and you should be, pretty much eliminated from the polite society. That's kind of what you see coming from the left. And then when you look all the way to the right is kind of divided up into kind of two substreams or subsections, one of which is like, kind of the Trump cult, which is like everything is great and everything is going to be great and everything is going to be the new American age of prosperity. And if you don't like what's going on and the fact that the Epstein files have been just kind of completely turned into a crock and a joke, and the fact that all of our money is going to foreign aid and we're kind of trying to do this American empire thing, which, look, on some level, I'm open to what could happen. I apologize. I'm going off the rails here. Just give me a second. I'll bring it back. I'll land the plane, guys. I promise. If we can do the empire thing successfully, okay. I mean, that I could see how that would benefit us. I could see how that would lower some gas prices. That would make things a little more prosperous. That would give us a little bit more leverage in the world stage. But we've been kind of going in the direction of the American empire thing, and I, for one, am not super excited about it, and that's not what I voted for, because what I voted for was like the localist as opposed to the globalist. And so, which is kind of how I got the moniker, which I actually kind of poached from Zeb when I was watching one of his streams earlier, the bacon cheeseburger nationalist. It's like, number one, how the bacon cheeseburger actually was created. It was created out of a symbol of sheer abundance and the American diner culture that came after World War II, where you could have three different sources of protein that come from technically three different types of animals. I mean, the beef and cheese, both being from cows, but different types of cows raised in different environments, where we're so abundant as a culture where we could put all of that together to create this dish that has become kind of trivial, and that is like a celebration of like American greatness right there. And yet we're trying to gild the lily by going to bombing countries for other countries and giving money away and doing all this American empire stuff, where it's like, guys, we already have it. It's here. It's Americans making stuff like bacon cheeseburgers and like digging in and improving the American experience by doing more right here and really fixing what we got going on at home before we try to go elsewhere, and building community and kind of building it from the grassroots, the little bit, the nuts and bolts. That's the thing that I'm really excited about. That's what got me into farming. And I know there's a lot of young men that are like, oh, this sucks, because justifiably they watch the complaint stuff coming from the right, and the Sneekos and the Fuentes and the Myron Gaines. Oh my God, Myron Gaines, that guy is such a dingus. I mean, basically all of these people who don't have any land, don't have anything that they've ever done with their hands that has ever, like, they've never participated meaningfully in society other than sitting on the sidelines and, lobbing missiles in and complaining, which justifiable complaints. They're not wrong in a lot of their complaints. I get that. But like when it comes to actually, well, what have you done? And when you hear people that are giving advice about dating and culture and like how we're going to go and what we're going to do, and it's like, wait, how many kids do you have? How many people are you feeding? What are you doing? And they roast I mean, Fuentes at least, I'll just single him out. One of the beefs that I have with him, he roasts some of the, menial laborers and the people that are working, uh, hands-on jobs, like the plumbers and the farmers and all the rest of that stuff. And I'm like, you want to be a leader and yet you're roasting the people that are actually responsible for building American culture. To me, that's just as offensive as Trump saying that, like, oh, I don't need your support if you're still going to talk about the Epstein files. Like, dude, that's what we voted for you to do, is to actually show some good faith and to dog walk some of these jerks that have been abusing children and have been abusing the American political system for their own personal gains. And then we're doing it in the name of what, global intelligence? Like that's somehow something that's supposed to make me feel better about this? Nah, sorry. Anyways, and so young men, justifiably black-pilled, depressed, like what's the point of it all, etc. I'm like, let's get focused on let's turn that justifiable outrage into building community, getting involved locally. If you can't buy a farm, like start looking for a wife that you can make a family with, and start talking to your friends and saying, hey, how could we put in a little bit of spare money together and lease some land? How can we get something going on? And God forbid, if like there's no other options and you're so destitute, talk to the the boomer locally who has a farm who still hasn't sold it and say, hey, how could we work with you? How could we try to make something happen here? Because there's a lot of old guys that have farmland that don't want to sell to BlackRock and they want to actually see something done, but who's coming to ask them, hey, can I lease your land to put some pigs on it? Nobody. The only people coming who are interested in talking to them about their land is the developers from the big companies. And so it's like, okay, well, I got to take what I can get. So that's kind of my thing. Sorry, went on a little rant. I'll take a sip, read the chat. I see everybody here in here talking, which is wonderful, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being patient with me. It takes a little bit to get me wound up, and then sometimes I get going and I got to stop. Okay. Um, Yes, Bellino's Bounty. So I'm scrolling back in the chat here a little bit, Mike. Yeah, I definitely want to do another video with him. That's my plan. We were kind of talking about it, and I think there's a lot more. I thought he was going to have more time. He had to get to another podcast, so I was like, oh, geez, already? Like I didn't even scratch the surface. I didn't even open up the can of this stuff to really get into the political stuff with him. So there's definitely. I hope that we can do it together. I'm like, it's funny. He said, I have a two-strike rule with people, and he's kind of good old boy, ex-Marine, or well, there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. Marines are always, once a Marine, always a Marine. But he was basically like, I give people two strikes, and I saw your glasses, and I was like, okay, I'll still talk to him and see, which I found kind of funny because I know that that's kind of the air that the glasses give off, but it's something for people to just remember me by or click on so that they can, if they think they're going to hate me because they see the glasses and they're like, look at this dingus, I gotta watch his nonsense, and then they actually listen, and I'm fairly reasonable, hopefully. um, so yeah, I hope we can do more together. Blue Wagon Farm says we're in Texas and are having a little out of the ordinary weather. Lots of rain yesterday, which is freezing tonight. Oh man, that ice is brutal. I would rather have like 3 feet of snow than have like, well, I don't know how to convert feet of snow to inches of ice, but snow is a lot easier to deal with than ice because ice brings down trees and power outage and stuff. Chris says, back on topic. I appreciate you guys keeping me on topic here, Chris. Thank you. I've seen some newish waterers advertise their below ground pressurized pipes and the animals activate it with their chins. Interesting. Rammy snowblower attached to the front of a 1000cc quad is game changer for snow removal. Interesting. A snowblower. I've never used a snowblower ever. Not because that's not a statement of elitism. That's just like I've never been able to afford. It's like I got a tractor. I've never had anything but a shovel. And then my dad was like, well, because my dad was living with us for a little bit, and he said, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing here, and I see you struggling, and you got all these kids. My dad, I mean, it's kind of like Seinfeld, when his parents are like, oh, Jerry, you need a hot meal, like, and you don't have a real job, so we want to buy you dinner. And he's like, dude, come on, guys. I'm actually successful doing what I'm doing, although I'm not quite at the Jerry Seinfeld level of success yet. But my dad is always kind of like, oh, geez, you need to get rid of these pigs and get a real job. And I'm like, I do work in the hospital. Like, I have a real job. I'm not a complete joke here. But basically, he was moved to give me a portion of my inheritance while he's still here, and he wanted to, hey, sweetie pie, he wanted to get me a tractor. Of course, he wanted to get me the tractor he wanted to get me, and it had to be a used tractor. But all that notwithstanding, turns out that he was right about the type of tractor, because I got a Kubota instead of, like, I wanted to get a bigger, like a New Holland tractor, because I think the blue tractors look sexier. The Kubota, I mean, orange, whatever. Like, I like the blue tractor, but I was going to get a big tractor so that it was going to be way more than I needed. And the small tractor actually is perfect for all the in and out of the barn stuff. Skid steer would have been like that much better, but still, as far as tractors go, I got a little 24.9 horse Kubota, and that thing is just like, it's amazing. I love it. And that's helped me a lot. But beyond that, I haven't had any money to like really expand. And so snowblower attachment would be absolutely bonkers. I would love to get that. Where are we here? Oh man. Oh, scrolling back up, sorry. Ginger says, I compressed a disc in my spine trying to sled off of a jump. I was 30 at the time. I realized that week that I'm not as young as I used to be. Yeah, that's it's funny how like that one injury can just like change the entire dynamic of everything else. And Chris says, my 2026 goal is a partial perimeter fence with anticipation for 27 to expand that and get apple trees planted, possibly a small barn, all finances and time dependent. Preach. You know, I was fortunate to get this place with some semblance of a perimeter fence from like 1988 or thereabouts that was put in. So electric really does the majority of the heavy lifting, which is nice because it's fast and easy to put in, fast and easy to repair. But having both the electric inside of a solid physical barrier, that's really the ticket. So I'm trying to just kind of piecemeal it, do a little bit at a time, and start working on the perimeter fence. Interesting you mentioned the apple trees, Chris, because I was watching a video today about mulberries, and I planted a little orchard-ish, and I think I am going to go all in on the mulberries because out of all the trees that I've planted, the apples, I like the apple trees. Some of the crabapple trees have been decently hardy, but I feel like the apple trees have been and the pear trees, and a lot of this is just my own fault and ignorance because like I dig a hole, put the root ball in there, bury it, give it some water, have a nice day, and I'll check you back in the spring and see if like we got, flowers on there or whatnot. So I still don't, and some of the trees, it takes them a little while to start talking to the males and the females so the pollination can happen, which is something I found out after I planted trees. So I accidentally got some of it right. I'm sure I accidentally got some of it wrong. And there's a couple of different things that I'm looking at, but I did put in some mulberry trees. And after watching this today, I think this video talking about how mulberry trees, their leaves have a tremendous amount of protein and lysine, and they are really good for coppicing and pollarding, which those are basically just like when you cut them off with either right at the ground, but you leave the stump, and then they sprout little shoots, and then the shoots put leaves out right where the animals can reach them, and you can actually feed the leaves, and they even drop green leaves, which both build the soil and also are good for the pigs to forage. So and they're real hardy. They grow in lousy soil, which we can work with that. So I think that what I'm going to do is pretty much where I have electric fence going across the pasture, and I kind of have separate the different subsections or into paddocks. I'm going to plant those across with mulberries. I'll kind of put a little electric on both sides just to keep the pigs out of the trees. and leave some openings, of course, so that they can go through. And then hopefully after a couple of years, we can reduce some of the fencing there and we'll have some good options. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited about mulberries. I'm just curious if anybody else here has tried anything with mulberries. Ginger says, we have two young boys right now, ages 9 and 10. It's hard not to worry about their future, looking out in society, trying to trust that God has his hands in it all. Amen. And that's, I mean, ultimately, if there was one recommendation, and I'm not here to preach to people, but I will be very candid about what I believe, and I would tell you that like my belief in God is relatively simple because you can take it from a spiritual standpoint and faith. And for a lot of people who don't believe, that's kind of moot and they're just like, yeah, whatever. But even if we remove kind of the faith aspect, just the simple component of saying I have limitations around my life that I can accept as being there for my good, being able to trust fully that God has my best in mind, as it says in Jeremiah. I forget the exact, citation, but that like I have plans for you. I know, and I'm here like not to bust your chops, but to try to help you. Excuse me a moment. Yes. Hi. I love you, sweetheart. Do you need something? Okay. Well, you're welcome to hang out and listen. All right. That simplification and elimination of like, well, what should I do? Should I go here? Should I go there? It's like I have rules, I have guidelines, I have all of these structures set up to kind of keep me on a narrow course, and that limiting of options is actually very beneficial, and it helps me deal with the anxiety because there's a lot of stuff where I'm just like, well, that's above my pay grade. I don't have to worry about that. I got to worry about what's right here on my plate. And that's the thing that really matters. And I'm obviously do that in a very imperfect and flawed way, as anybody who's watched my channel could probably tell. But I think that is the answer. Like if there is an answer for everything that's going on right now, it's like focus on the little stuff in front of us that we can actually do something about. And for me, faith is the obvious way to do that because it gives you a clear step-by-step directive and pathway. And look, Pascal's wager, right? If at the end of my life I go into a hole in the ground or they, roll me up and smoke me when I die, in the words of Willie Nelson, and there's nothing there, well, who cares, right? Like no harm done. It benefited me in my life, and I wasn't miserable because I chose to do things a specific way. It was beneficial to me, and I used those limitations. And in the event, I would argue the highly likely event that there is something bigger than Stephen Riker and my genius brain here controlling the universe, then I'm probably going to be better served having tried to live in a way that's mindful of that. But yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's trusting. I hate to say trust the plan, but I trust that God's plan is better than QAnon, right? Secret Noise says 2026 goals. Yeah, that's a good question. I should have asked 2026 goals. That should have been the title of the stream, and here I am fixated on the weather. Secret Noise says 2026 goals. Number 1, sell enough pork to stay land in use to keep my property taxes down. Excellent. I support that. Continue Kaizen to our processes, making it easier for my family to enjoy chores. Number 3, connect more with other farmers, build that community. Amen. And just so that Mr. Secret Noise, no pictures, I embrace the Kaizen philosophy, and I'm very familiar with that because I love Fuji cameras. That's not what I'm shooting on right now. This is a Lumix because Fuji, their stuff isn't great for video. It's not super, it's a little clunky the way it handles, but I love Fuji cameras for still photographs because of the fact that that's like the whole point of what they do. It's very Kaizen. They always want to make it a little bit better, focusing on those details, eliminating inertia points and friction, and build a better mousetrap. And I think that's kind of the way that I try to approach, although I haven't ever put that terminology in connection with what I'm doing with the farm, but that's exactly what it is. And now you've given me a better handle to pick up that issue and to explain it to folks, so I thank you for that. And building community, connecting more with farmers, like that's absolutely. I'm trying to do more of that. Like we're having classes here. One of the reasons why I'm doing the Homestead Pigs 101 class is to try to get more people to come in. I want to do things that are strictly community based, like that aren't a class, but that are just like for people to come in and hang out and show their stuff and just socialize, like purely social events here. But yeah, I think that's a good call. Ginger said, loving those goals, Chris. Fruit trees are such a good investment for food security. I just like the fact that you don't have to replant them if you do it right, hopefully. Chris says the apples are intended to feed livestock. Whatever drops will freeze under the snow, be good all winter, and they dig for it. Also doubles as tree hay and coppice firewood. And let's see, Blue Wagon Farm, 2026 goal to have the farm pay for the farm for the first time. Eggs are taken care of, the chicken feed and replacement chicks plus some. Our first litter of piglets is due any day. That's awesome. Generally speaking, I think I should know my numbers better. My farm has for the last several years, it's at least broken even. The reason why I'm a little bit tentative about saying that with any certainty is because I think I have had some profits, but whatever profits I've had have all gone into like the barn and some of the work that's happened out there, and also new breeding stock. So you know, it's not, the profits haven't shown up in the bank account, let's say, but it's getting there. It's a little bit at a time, Secret Noise says, agree, Stephen, we need to focus on here. We can make America farmers again and stay within our own walls and focus on us and expand America here. Yeah, it's the one thing I always come back to is like, what can we borrow from the Amish? You know, and I have heard on, you know, some streams where people push back and say, oh, like, you know, the Amish are not that different from like the Hasidic Jews in upstate New York, where you may have seen that documentary feature that Tyler Oliveira did. He went to upstate New York where there's a community of Hasidic Jews there. I literally grew up about a half an hour away from there. I used to fish there in Monroe, the Ramapo River, drove past there all the time, and you like, it's a thing. And on one level, like, I'm not saying that we should be that insular and like literally keep everybody else out necessarily, but I would say if we had even somewhat of that in our mindset, in terms of building a community and really maintaining tradition and having those things that we share together as a group, that's the thing that I look at the Amish and I say, you know, there's an element of, and this is one of the things I was supposed to, Zeb and I were going to talk about, was kind of like the Jeffersonian vision with the yeoman farmer, and Jefferson was very much agriculturally minded, wanting the culture of the United States, the young United States at the time, to be built on the yeoman farmer, the homesteader, the agricultural vision for that pioneer going out and, you know, taking the fruits of the land by whatever means necessary, and that's part of conquest, and that's what, you know, that's the reality of the human experience, is that conquest happens and then dust settles and people get all civilized, and then they like to wring their hands about it, clutch their pearls, but that's how everybody's been doing it since people got here. And then obviously the Hamiltonian view, which is much more industrially focused, and it's obvious which direction that we have gone now. But I look at this and I think specifically with AI, I understand the benefits of AI and why people don't hate AI enough, but there, to me, one of the things I think about is like, there's not enough pushback on AI. And obviously in the political space, nobody wants to push back on AI because of the fact that that's where all of the moguls and the billionaires and the bean counters and all the haves, they all put all their eggs in that basket of like, we're going to get behind the AI. And so they don't want to be on the, you know, the ass end of the pyramid, so to speak. They want to be like leading the, you know, tip of the spear. And like, in what reality has anything ever conceivably happened with AI that would be beneficial to humanity? I mean, look at any technology that exists that humans have access to. Where can we find technology that is so that has been used with such unparalleled goodness that its goodness has, outstripped the evil that can be accomplished with. Like, we need limitations. I guess that's kind of where I'm going, kind of to tie into the religious convo as well. Like, we need limitations as humans, and this idea that literally, I mean, if you want to go back, we can get into the weeds here and go back as far as the Garden of Eden, and the whole argument that was sold to humanity by the serpent himself was, hey, you guys have these limitations. Oh, come on, get rid of that. That's nonsense. You don't need that. You're smarter than that. You're cooler than that. You're better than that. Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be, life affirming. Just go ahead, just do it. And that rejection of limitation is exactly what got us in trouble. And even if you don't believe the literal and religious component of that, just as an archetype of like, this is a message that has been written and rewritten and stamped into and written into the mechanics of human society throughout generations and generations, it's probably important for us to kind of scratch our head and realize, oh, like some limitations are actually good. Having zero friction anywhere, probably not good. Like Midas, like I can touch anything and turn it into gold. Sounds good at first, but there is more to it, and you need to have a little bit of limitation. And I would love to see more of that happening. Again, apologies for the rant. Chris says the trees are a very long-term investment. My property should support 200 full-size apple trees before putting a cramp on the grass grazing. Wow, that's impressive. That's good. You got a lot of work. But that is awesome. As Ginger says, you got a lot of land. 20 acres, it sounds like you're going to be managing that pretty aggressively, which is even more impressive. Yeah, Amelia, do you need something? I saw that. Okay, I'll tell mommy. Okay. And maybe stay away from her. Like, you do something else for a minute. Chris says, a snowblower is huge if you don't have room to shove snow. It projects it up and away, up and over, so you're not trying to push and, that to kind of distribute it a little bit, get it out of the way. That makes a lot of sense. Bellino's Bounty 2026 goals for my girlfriend and I is to get more fruit trees planted while sorting out where we want our house to go, where we want to put our livestock. So, yeah, we got some big projects in here. That's exciting. Chris says, I would love mulberries. I don't know if they would survive here. Let's see. This winter confirmed a solid zone 2. During most years, it could be argued that we're in zone 3A with certain mulberries should survive. Yeah. I would say do a little research, check it out, see if there's anything. And sometimes, like, I don't know. I've put in some, like, I have peach trees and nectarine trees here, and they're actually doing better than some of the other trees. The ones that I couldn't get, like, that were real fickle, and I don't know whether there could have been extenuating issues because, again, I just said, okay, this area, I just picked out some trees, bought them, dug holes, put them in, and that was it. I haven't been very disciplined in the way I've approached the trees, and I put in a few, I think hickory and, is it hazelnut? I put in a few nut trees. I should know, but I think hickory were the main ones that I put in. But a lot of the things that you put in, you kind of, you try to get close, but sometimes I've put in stuff that isn't quite, it's supposed to be a little warmer, and it's done okay for me. So, it might be worth trying and researching, and I'll let you know kind of how things turn out here as, in 3 years, if you haven't figured it out for yourself by then. I'll let you know how things are going in this part of the country where hopefully we'll have a little something to show for ourselves. But yeah, the trees, it's a big long-term investment, but I'm excited for being able to have something where it can produce all of that stuff and be kind of established, and it just takes so much of the work out of the picture. It also helps a ton with the erosion, and I have not yet really tried feeding leaves to the animals, so that's going to be another factor to kind of get into is seeing how that affects things with on their side of things. All right, where are we at here? Good goals. Let me see. What are my goals for 2026? I did not make an official New Year's resolution this year, probably because I have a handful of them. Um, so definitely putting in some mulberries, um, landing the plane in terms of the new breed stock that I have gotten, basically getting everybody bred, seeing how everybody does, call everybody out who needs to be called, and try to get down to a pretty consistent like starting lineup that I can work with for the next year, and then figure out by next winter how I'm going to do things farrowing on the pasture, because my pasture based farrowing has been pretty non existent during the winter. To be fair, I had my purebred Berkshire, purebred Berk sow, Aggie. She farrowed out in one of the porta huts and was like, single digit temps. They had no problem, but it was just her by herself out there. Oh no, she had another buddy out there. It was her and one of the other sows. She farrowed out there and had the other sow to keep her company. Um, but in terms of barn space, like with all of these like 4-month-old piglets, if they're going to be all like dropping litters in the spring, I'm going to have to really improve my coordination and breeding, the time wise, so that I can have things, staggered enough so that I don't have a million piglets all at the exact same time. It needs to be a little bit more buttoned up, and I need to get more discipline. And that's always what happens, I feel like, where things are going well and it's easy to kind of fly by the seat of your pants. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna get a few more pigs, and that'll be, it's not that hard. We'll just get some more pigs, and then you get some more pigs, and now wait a minute, now it's hard because I have more pigs, and there's like, it's not just like, oh, this one, she's pregnant, so she needs this, or she wants to go over there. Okay, well, we'll move her over here, no problem. And you can play man to man. Like when the herd gets bigger, now you have to play zone, and it's a bigger ball. It's a different ball of wax. But in the long run, and I need to be a little more disciplined with the medical side of things, because this could be another point of debate or contention, depending. I don't know kind of where you guys all stand on this stuff, but when it comes to like antibiotics, treatments, vaccines, I'll tell you briefly my perspective is that I try to treat the animals the way I would want to be treated. So if I'm sick and suffering, I'm going to give whatever drugs are available to make my animals feel better and get better and keep them better. I try to do as much as I can on the prevention side, because it's obviously a lot cheaper most of the time. And one of the things that I have noticed, and this is something that I may do a video, slightly ranty video at some point in the future about this, is you'll have homesteaders who have like 3, 4, 5 pigs, and they talk about like, oh my, I don't use any of this and I don't use any of that. I'm not like those big evil, industrial farms. But they're on land that has not had any other animals on it, possibly in generations or at all. And they have a small number of animals that they can distribute the impact out, because they're just doing very small numbers. And so with that type of situation, I was in the same boat, and I had the same kind of perspective where I said, yeah, I'm not going to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That was always my approach going in. And then as I, especially doing more with farrowing, because there's a lot of conditions, maybe not a lot, there's a handful. I know, I forget all the acronyms and the names. I know one of them is PRRS. And that is the one, if I'm not mistaken, where you can have like mummified babies that are like kind of, they solidify instead of developing. And so you have like a bunch of stillbirths, and it can even kill the mom. But a lot of these reproductive diseases, you don't you wouldn't know unless you're breeding them. So a lot of people are like, yeah, why would I bother with vaccinating my animals? Like, that's just nonsense, you know? And yet I found that the vaccination, because I had a couple of sows die, I had one sow die with a litter of piglets on board. So I lost her, complete loss. She went, in the trash pretty much, and lost, I think she had like 10 babies. And I had put almost a year's worth of feed into her, and I was really looking forward to getting some babies out of her. And she died. So after that point, I said, okay, maybe it's time to reconsider some of this stuff, because with breeding, there's different sets of standards. And then every time I have upgraded the amount of animals that I've had, it's like my approach has always been with this stuff is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when it starts being broke, I'm going to look in the most obvious place to find the most simple solution to fix it, both from a preventative standpoint, but then also, incorporating the medicinal stuff that is necessary in some cases. And I don't go completely off the rails with like the vaccines. So far, the only vaccines that I've given my animals are my breeders, and I, unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons why I say that I need to be more disciplined with the medical stuff with my animals, is that like I mean to give them some vaccines. Like I have vaccines in the fridge that I was going to give them, but then it's like, well, you got to have them. Like it takes help. It's not something that you can do by yourself, because the making sure that you get the right ones, you get them one time that they're, and so I need to get a hog snare, basically like a little captive ring system where you can kind of wrap it around the top of the snout, and you hold a little tension on there, and that gets them to chill out, so you can give them a shot, and you can do some of that stuff by yourself, and you have a little leverage to get their cooperation. And then, give them the injection, mark them, and then that way everything is a little bit simpler, and also kind of corral them, put them in some areas where I can work with them a little easier too. And so I guess one of the things I should probably aim for would be being able to hire some help. I would like to find like a high school kid or a young person who's physically capable, and start to hire out a little bit of that, so I get some help working the animals to make sure that everybody's doing stuff on a schedule, and it's not just like, well, I meant to, but it's good enough, so I'm going to leave it alone, and that, which is kind of what has happened a lot of the times. Oh, Chris is taking off. See you later, Chris. Family dinner. Well, that's a worthwhile reason to leave. Absolutely. But yeah, so with the vaccines and stuff, there's a lot of people I know that take, and I ask people when I'm farrowing, I ask, like, do you want me, like, Fostera is the main vaccine that I would give feeder pigs, because it's pretty much against, like, some respiratory stuff, some pneumonia, and also the mycoplasma. And the mycoplasma is the one that, and I still haven't given that to my breeders, but the mycoplasma in the arthritis, mycoplasma arthritis is the one thing that, from like moldy stuff, whether it's moldy bedding or moldy food, that's the one thing I've had some issues with over the years. It was this past winter, I had one of my sows. She's getting better, and I was able to find a few different not antibiotics technically, I forget what they're called, but like antifungals or whatever that have been helping somewhat, but she's still not out of the woods. She's still, her back leg is still a little bit swollen, and it seems like she's limping around, but she's doing a lot better now. I think she's going to make it. And then I had my big boar. He got a mycoplasma, and he almost died. And I think I've told this story on the stream a few times, where he was almost dead. He was down and out, and couldn't get up to eat, couldn't get up to drink. I gave him all the different meds that I had, and nothing was moving the needle. So I just said, well, hopefully you make it. And I brought the hose over to him. It was in the summertime, and I brought the hose over to him, stuck it in his mouth, gave him a little bit to drink, and kind of said, all right, bud, like, do the best that you can. Sorry, I'm just checking out my video quality to see here what we have. It'd be nice if this stupid thing would tell me what we have. I don't know if we have, I don't know if we're in 4K or not here. It doesn't want to tell me. All right, well, I guess we'll have to look at that later. In any case, yeah, so he kind of nursed him back to health, and he wound up pulling through. But that's so when you have issues where you're losing money, you're disappointing customers, and it's really like cutting into your business, not just financially, but also in terms of morale. Like when you have a year's worth of money and feed into a sow, and you're looking forward to seeing her babies, and then she dies and babies all go with her, like right around the time that she's about to give birth, that's not great for morale. And it's like, okay, maybe I'd be willing to budge a little bit on my, not super favorable towards vaccines. I mean, I look at it in terms of the way that I see vaccines for people, and I'm not like I think it's risk assessment, right? Like when I went over to Africa, I took Malarone, the malaria, the anti-malarial, and I think that's the drug or the vaccine, the pills, and there's a few different things that you take, and it's like if you're going to be over there and you're not used to it, and kind of based on the problems that you see, then you try to play in advance of that. But I guess one of the things I would say is that if somebody is kind of new to this, understand that as like you're first doing it and your first couple of years on this piece of land where you have enough room to move them around and they're not kind of cycling back over the same old ground like Pink Floyd, it is, you kind of develop this false sense of like nobody can touch me, like my animals, they're just like, why doesn't everybody do it this Smithfield? Like, hello, can somebody call up the guys from Smithfield and let them know they've been doing it all wrong? Just let your animals go out in the woods, they'll be fine. And it's like very, very different when those animals take a second lap around there and you have enough animals and you start to see the second time around and you get more animals, and when that expansion happens and the impact and the usage on the land can't be subdivided and kind of diffused as easily anymore. And that happens at some point for everybody, because if you can just let your animals run around and they don't get sick, like everybody's just, I mean, naturally speaking, most people are just going to say, oh, I'll get a couple more, I'll get a couple more, I'll get a couple more. But at some point, that critical mass, you hit that critical mass and it's like, okay, now we have to be a little bit more involved in terms of medical intervention. And that has to do, there's an extent to which I am not willing to go because I don't want to have that much medical intervention that I have to give because the land is not big enough to handle that amount of animals. Like there's you can go so far with the vaccines and the antibiotics, then there's a point where it's like, okay, I got 10 acres, 7 of it that's really technically in use with the animals. And if I think that the number of sows and breeders that I have, I think about 30. And I may be able, I do still have a couple acres up above the barn that I want to open up. And right now that's very rocky and I can't drive the tractor up there. So I've been kind of, I have had animals up there, but it's not like, I wouldn't put breeding animals up there for farrowing because it's kind of too far out of range and my ability to get up there and help them or see what's going on. I want someplace where I can get in and out of, but that's probably going to be the next big improvement if I can afford it, because getting somebody in here with an excavator to open some of that stuff up and make a little road so I can get the tractor up top, then I can really bring the animals up there and really start making some progress up there. Then I might be able to think about putting more animals. But right now, with the space that I'm using, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 pigs, maybe 25. Because like I'd rather cull the ones that are just more of a pain in the butt to work with and just keep the ones that are that do all the work for me and that produce better, and then you kind of have the same amount of piglets but with less effort. And because breeding is kind of the main thing that like I really want to focus on and continue to focus on here. So all that to say, yeah, I pretty much I bought a whole bunch of new breeding stock, and you know, by the grace of God, they'll make it through the winter. But once the winter's over, it's going to be a competition to see who's going to stay and who's going to be here for another winter versus who's going to go to the, you know, go to sausage. And I want to kind of get that squared away to have a little bit more of a rinse and repeat, because this is the first year. This is like my 5th year doing pigs, where I hope to be at a point where it's like, okay, this is what we're doing here, and we're going to kind of do this, and then we're going to keep doing that thing where we're like at the, you know, we've reached cruising altitude, to put a different analogy on it. We reached cruising altitude, and this is kind of what we want to maintain, and then put that kaizen and improvement into, there goes my blood sugar alarm. Put that put that improvement and that strategery, if I can borrow a little bit of W speak, put some of that improvement into what we're doing with that to make it more efficient, faster, cheaper, more profitable, but kind of keeping the parameters of our system in terms of number of animals, the type of feed, the storage of feed, because like by that point, hopefully I'm going to have a grain bin set up, and there's a couple of, you know, big improvements really from where I first started, that like it's made such a big difference getting the feed delivered instead of having to go pick it up. That's been a game changer. And you know, it's a little more expensive, but not having to go do those trips and break my back loading and unloading trailers and returning trailers, U-Haul trailers and stuff, and breaking my truck because I got a little Toyota Tacoma, and trying to take one of those things and pulling, you know, 2-3 tons of feed every month is just, it's not a great fit. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but trying to just tighten up and solidify so that we have a better setup here. And then obviously with YouTube, like that's the other thing, because the way I'm kind of looking at this is, and it's like I can keep growing in terms of the number of animals that I'm working with, but if I do that, then that cuts into my ability to make stuff here on YouTube and spend time with you guys and to actually create content, which is something that I really enjoy, and also is something that I hope that can be profitable as we go a little bit further along. We're kind of like one hand washes the other. You know, I'm not necessarily looking to be a full-time YouTuber. I'm also not necessarily looking to be a full-time farmer. Also not looking to be a full-time diabetes educator in the hospital. So having kind of a little bit of everything, hopefully it could work. That's what I'm hoping for, but I want to kind of obviously get past 1,000 subscribers and then see about monetizing things and just keep growing. I guess that's kind of why anybody gets into farming, right? Like you like watching growth, you like seeing growth. That's why it's exciting when piglets are born. It's like I get to watch them grow. It's like, oh, look at this. Like we had one animal and now we have 11 animals. And then the little ones, they're going to get bigger, and we're going to see what they act like and how they grow and how they're, you know, the different characteristics they develop. And then obviously there's bacon down the road too. And that is one of the things that I also need to do is start putting a little bit more effort and research behind data collection, really just like tracking what I'm doing in terms of my the crosses that I have, the meat crosses, so that I can really start to make culling decisions, not just based on how did mom do, but then to make culling decisions based on how does this cross match up to give us meat quality that I can actually advertise for, where it is a proven cross, and it's not just a, you know, well, it looks good, you know, like it looks good in a show environment, but rather have it be something where it's like actually sought after, and it can eliminate some problems or stress for homesteaders or other farmers that want to have a good, fast growing animal. On that note, and I think we got 5 of you guys in here. If anybody has something that they want to chat about, we can kick that around here. I'm not completely out of steam. I still got a couple of things I can throw out there because Sean, who is in here frequently, and hi Sean, if you're watching this later, mentioned to me that he laid out a pretty couple lengthy comments on some of the posts that I had on the channel, talking about his, what the process he was going through to find breed stock. And the reality is that finding good quality breed stock can be a real challenge depending on where you are in the country. And I know that's something I think is more of an issue here in the Northeast than maybe in other parts of the country. I'd be interested to hear from you guys if it is similar. Maybe it's just everywhere that's not like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska. Everything else is just like, if it's outside of that, kind of call it corn belt, like good luck getting breed stock or something. But it's been challenging because I feel like in New England there's not a ton of people who really take breeding seriously, and there's a lot of people who are kind of like Zeb said in the interview that I did with him the other day, like puppy mills, where there's a lot of people that they can get just far enough into breeding to make a little money and have some piglets and have some fun with it, but they're not really serious breeders who are developing genetic lines. And that's kind of ultimately the big goal that I have for my farm, is where I'm going to cull. It's going to take me some time to get there. So this isn't necessarily like a 2026 resolution, but it's going to take me some time to cull ruthlessly down to where I get real proven crosses that do exceptional things, and so that I can have exceptional genetics with exceptional performance, and then have fewer animals and sell them at a premium because of that fact, so that they have, basically like a higher end product. And that's it's a decision because you can go either way. I know people who are doing pigs that literally go the exact opposite way, where they just want to have what's cheap and available, and they can get out there and make, pork chops and bacon, and it doesn't matter. And there definitely are people who feel that way, but then there's also, other people who appreciate the genetics, and I feel like there's a lack of that in this part of the country, where I think that's part of the reason, frankly, why I've had a lot of the success that I've had is, number one, the people who are breeding animals up here, they don't know how to use a computer. And I don't mean any disrespect, but like a lot of the old timers, they're not building websites. They don't even have email. And understanding a little bit about web design, photography, how to present things, a little bit of basic online digital marketing, and then search engine optimization, email lists, all of a sudden it's like people are coming to me. I don't advertise. I don't go looking for anybody. People come to me and I'm turning them away, and that's just kind of, I think I do have some good animals, but I think some of that is just the way I've been able to position myself, and also the fact that, as I've told you guys some horror stories about some of the things that I've seen with breeders in this part of the country, and other people, it's pretty common, like buyer beware up here when it comes to that, because there's a lot of unscrupulous breeding and animal husbandry in this part of the country. And because it's just, you need to have big money to invest in order to make quality husbandry of animals easy, right? Like you're talking big barns, that's big money. And people don't have that kind of money up here to put into agriculture, because it's just, obviously it's New Hampshire, it's not Iowa. So as a result, a lot of that is, a lot of the breeding, you're relying on people doing it kind of the old fashioned way, and trying to do the best of both worlds, where they're thinking about the modern conceptualization of genetics and breeding, but also with the physical manifestation of that happening in a pretty like third world country type of physical environment where, you know, it's pretty rugged, and that can be hard to accomplish. Let me get in the chat here for a second. Blue Wagon says, finding any decent stock here is exactly why I've started to breed them. Interesting. And that's down in Texas, huh? And just curious about that, to follow up on that question there, Blue Wagon. If this is because of like too much mixture, or is it like you can't find purebreds in your area, or is it that everything has been kind of, for lack of a better term, tainted by the industrial gene pool, where you think you're getting something that's going to, you know, thrive in terms of foraging, and it winds up being a little bit kind of weaker and not as hardy, or whether that's just like, you know, hillbilly breeders that are just kind of mixing and matching without really thinking about anything, or is that kind of more a spin-off of the, you know, confinement feedlot operations, and those genetics are finding their way into the breeding. I'm kind of curious about that. Secret Noise Pictures says, good quality piglets are hard to find too. We struggled for 3 years and decided to get our IPP breeding stock for our small homestead, and we like them. And just to clarify, my idiot cat needs to, okay, sorry, cat wanted to make an appearance on stream. Yeah, the IPP, I'd be interested actually to, you know, play around with those a little bit. Not necessarily with breeding, but like I'd be interested to like see pictures and video and kind of the finished product at least, because I think there's, you know, there's some good genetics in there. I know that it's a worthwhile thing for, like, yeah, all the breeds. A lot of it just comes down to if you like it enough to play with it enough to figure out how to make it work, and then you take the good with the bad. And for some, you know, sometimes you're sacrificing time because it takes longer. For others, you're sacrificing a little bit of, you know, maybe some of the meat quality, so that you can get something out there faster. And I am not a hater. At least I don't mean to be. I hope I haven't come across too much that way. I do push back a little bit on some of the stuff of the Coonies and the IPPs and some of the lard breeds. Again, I always stipulate that lard breed is kind of a misrepresentation, because if you feed one of those animals properly, it's not going to be that lardy. But also that, like, people need to learn how to use lard, because lard is actually super good. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I always come back to is just like, if you're happy with it and it meets your need, then there's really not much. There's always people that are going to give, you know, kind of, and I have actually thought about, you know, kind of to tie back into the earlier conversation about kind of some of the social issues and stuff. I have thought about in the past about just kind of going away from the business of farming and just kind of doing animals for our own consumption here, doing it more of going back to the homestead, away from, you know, away from the business side of things, and just downsizing dramatically. And at some point I may do that, you know, I may go back to that. And when I do, I might be hitting you up for some of those IPP breeding stock, because I know, like, they're a new-ish breed, and it could be hard to find them around. So, and I have Tamworths, Old Spots, and Berkshires. I have had some Durocs in the mix, none at this point, but the Tamworths are real hard to find. Purebred Tams, like, everybody's got a Tam cross. Like any heritage pig, it's like it's got some Tamworth in there somewhere. But like when you're talking about purebred, good quality Tams, like those are hard to find. I found a couple sources in New York State, and I've been pretty happy with what I've seen out of them. I got like couple of chocolate Tams, and there's all different like color mutations of the Tams. I got 2 females that are like chocolate, and they're kind of like really, really like dark burgundy, beautiful little animals, and they're super sweet, they're very friendly, and they're kind of built almost like feral hogs, and I like that about them. I appreciate their personality, and kind of just they're ready to stand on business. Like they're very stout, hardy animals. And then there's an older female that I bought from that same farm. She's blonde and very light colored, and she's about 4 years old. So I'm looking forward to see what comes out of her, because her babies are going to be from her, obviously, and the boar from that farm in New York that are, they're both older line, like directly from the UK, from what the guy was telling me. So it'll be fun to kind of mix some of that in and play with that a little bit. That's the thing I like about the breeding. I like kind of just playing with the combinations, you know. Blue Wagon says, first problem is the timing. We started this a few years ago. 90% is what is available are the fad breeds. Yeah, I mean, and it comes and goes. You know, there's definitely, I mean, I guess since we're kind of going back around, taking a second lap around dealing with some of the pig breed stuff, I guess one of the reasons why I tend to lean a little heavier on the, hey, not so fast with like the, or call it like I push back a little bit on some of the stuff with some of the lardier breeds and some of the slower growing let's call them homestead breeds, is because of the fact that I feel like you see a lot of media out there that pushes those breeds, because I mean they make sense kind of for a homestead that is doing a small thing, and I think that there is a need, and or I guess I would say my goal personally is to make sure to clarify to people that, number one, if it's your first time doing anything with pigs, if you take a pig that you got out of a pig barn and you raise it nicely and you give it a dry place to sleep, sufficient company and good quality feed and access to the great outdoors, that animal is going to be noticeably better to eat than anything you've ever gotten or will ever get from the grocery store. And the difference in meat quality between different animals that you raise on your farm is a much smaller jump than the difference between something raised that you get from the grocery store and something that you get out of your own pasture or woodlot. Like, going from grocery store to farm is like big jump. Going from one breed to another breed is a smaller jump, and getting started should be just like use what you have around you and whatever you can get a hold of. You're not going to go wrong raising your own animals and enjoying them if it's like kind of a, you know, from a beginner standpoint. It's only when you're breeding and you're thinking about what you want to build, then it factors in. And everybody's got different criteria, and my criteria have changed. So I've kind of gone from just purebred tams and kind of started to factor in some of the other animals, because like the tams, I wanted a little bit more fat. And old spots out here are pretty available. There's a decent amount of purebred old spots in New England because they're a little trendy. I'll be the first to acknowledge. But I like them. They're good animals. But what the hard thing to find with the old spots is like good meat old spots that are not just kind of like the, you know, subpar, like decent pigs, but like when you get the ones that really muscle out and fill out nicely and have the good bone structure, that's the thing that's a little harder to find. I got my old spot boar, he's very well put together. I got a couple of nice females. I like them, so I'm going to keep playing with those and see what happens there. And the Berks, I'm still not sure how I feel about the Berks, but I mean, I've seen and heard too much good stuff about them to not at least put them into the mix and try to get like a three-way cross so we get maximum hybrid vigor and see if we can't ultimately use that to synthesize a real good crossing system that'll just build a better pig. Yeah, understood. Blue Wagon. You're talking about the slow growing, smaller breeds. Yeah, a lot of people like the smaller, slow growing breeds, and it's again, it's something where I like to argue. I like to push back on stuff because I want people to understand both sides of an issue so that they're able to make a decision and be fully like not wrapped around the axle about stuff that doesn't necessarily matter. Because, for example, if let's say you have, you're homesteading and all you can find in your area are bigger pigs, well, put a little extra effort into some of the infrastructure and spend a lot of time socializing them and be aware of the unique group of situations that provoke their stress responses and basically can create an environment where they would be dangerous. Pay real close attention to that stuff, and you can raise a 800-pound, pig, and I got a barn full of 800-pound animals, my breeders, just as easily as you can, a smaller type of animal. And it's just kind of, but some of that is also, and I get this, like it's a psychological thing where it's like, look, I feel better about being away from my home and sending the wife and the kids in to do chores, knowing that the animals are a little bit smaller, and that's totally fine too. But I think a lot of times you can problem solve to get where you need to be with just about any kind of, just about any kind of animal. It's just, um, you know, sometimes people get caught up on things that I feel like are like, well, as long as you're able to do the thing that you want to do, that's the most important thing, and not being discouraged because it's like, oh, well, I don't know if I should raise pigs because I can't get this one that I want, or what have you. Secret Noise says the Pasture Pig podcast, very good podcast. That's going to be under one of my recommended content creators, Troy McClung. Has had a great episode with the IPP Breed Association. I was sold after listening. Lots of great info and insight, and we've loved the pork and process. Cool. Yeah, I would like to. I want to try some. So I am definitely interested in that. I mean, I also have to try my own pork because like I don't think I've eaten any purebred tam pork. Most of the pork that I've eaten off of my farm has been crosses. Like the first two pigs that I bought, which were just like industrial hogs, they were nothing remarkable genetically. They were just pink pigs. One was a pink pig, and then the other one was like cross with some brown and black. It was just kind of a mix of a whole bunch of things. And I tell you that pork was like, it was unrecognizable compared to store-bought pork. If somebody had served me that and asked me what animal it was, I would have been scratching my head because that pork chop was nothing like the pork chops that I had at the store. And those were the most unremarkable animals. And that's part of the reason why I'm always I always push back a little bit when people say, oh, well, it's the meat quality, it's the Wagyu of pork, right? There's this one guy on these ads on my feed on Facebook where guys, oh, it's Iberico and we raise pigs in Spain and this is so much better than even what the Americans are doing out on their farms. Even the homesteaders, it's kind of trying to dunk on everybody, and I'm like, okay, I'm sure it's good, but like I've had really amazing pork that comes from really, really unremarkable animals, just genetically speaking. And I mean, I don't know. Some of it may be just like where it's easier to get that kind of result and you can get it more consistently. And some of it is just happy accidents. I've had a lot of happy accidents, with what I've done so far with farming. No question about that. But yeah, I guess kind of my big thing is just start where you can with whatever animals that you have, because it's going to be so much better than what you get out of the store that you kind of can't miss. And then you can always go from good to great as you dial it in, either within a specific breed that you like or trying different breeds or whatever. But there's always different, and there's so much that can be done in terms of like the science behind finishing hogs. It's a whole nother ball of wax. Um, One other breed I'm interested in, but I've not tried, is a red wattle. I've heard some good things about them too, but I haven't gotten any of those yet. Blue Wagon says there are a few local feeder pig farms within 50 miles, but I didn't like how they ran their farm. Lots of pigs running everywhere, no idea of inbreeding, age, not a lot of organization. Hey, Lightfoot, good to see you here, bud. Um, there are also a lot of farms that specialize in show pigs here. They're very popular. Our first potential sow was a show pig. She lost her whole litter inside. Ah, man, I'm sorry. That sucks. You had to put her down. I'll circle back around to my first comment. I have nothing against any other breeds. It's just not what we want to do. Totally get that, and I think that's kind of everybody's on that same page. I always feel a little bit, because like my natural reaction is to always be kind of a, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. Well, I tend to be a little bit like, I like to just kind of push back. I like to argue. I like to argue. I like to give people a hard time about stuff, not to be mean, but like just because I like to play with ideas. And so when people are, and I see a lot on YouTube in terms of content that is based around this, where it kind of seems to be what YouTube is pushing in the homestead space, where it's like, get these pigs, and then I see a lot of people doing that, and I see kind of the when that comes full circle, because people are not actually doing the full research. They're just kind of drinking the Kool-Aid, and then they get the animals, and then they find out the other half of the story. And so my commentary, specifically with like the mangas, the IPPs, the Coonies, all that stuff, is not really directed at, actually not at all directed to those of you who already have those animals and like them and are happy with them, because you know what you're working with. You're doing not exactly what I'm doing, but exactly what all of us are more or less doing, which is, you know what you want, you find an animal that does it in a way that you're happy with and you like, and that's that. There's not really anything more to it, but it's more for the audience, or the people who are kind of on the outskirts, to understand the flip side of things. And so there's always going to be a little bit of favoritism and all that stuff, but that's my intention, and kind of I'm trying to synthesize it a little bit so that I can be clear for everybody, because I don't want to leave things unsaid that I want to say, but I also want to make sure that I'm not like, coming off too heavy-handed. And Blue Wagon says our boar that we use for that show pig is Burke Duroc cross. We still have him. We bought a replacement Burke Duroc that'll be ready in a month or so. First guy was too big and has had trouble. Yeah, I've had some issues with the show pig genetics in there. We were kind of into Durocs for a little bit, and then we got out of them for that reason, because there was complications as a result of one of my boars. The other boar wasn't so bad, but he kind of went by the way. And some of it, and I don't know if that, I know in my experience with the way my boars grew, you kind of have to separate the boars out, which is something I have not done. My boars hang out with the girls pretty much year round, unless somebody's farrowing. The breeders all just kind of like, they're the adult pigs, and they all hang out in their own little group. But to be able to isolate the boars so that you can feed them less, specifically less feed that is going to actually convert to mass. So like, you can give them hay or give them brewer's grain, stuff like that, that's going to be fun for them to eat maybe, but that's not going to put weight on them so quickly, to kind of slow them down a little bit. Although what I've heard from some old timers is that you don't have to worry about the boar getting too big, because if he's a good boar, okay, that's again, buyer beware, but they said if it's a good boar, he should be able to get the job done with a younger and smaller sow without hurting her or gilt. And to be fair, like I've had, my big boar, he's like 700 pounds at least, probably 800 by now. He's a big boy, and he's he's bred some of the smaller girls that I have, and he's been able to do it without hurting anybody. So I don't know. It's yeah, that's getting like the show pigs definitely mess things up, because I think for a lot of people, when they're starting out and you don't really understand the dynamics of breeding and what's really required to make a good breeding animal, you just see, like, you look at the hip to waist, or the, well, yeah, I guess hip to waist ratio on the pig, and you see these hams that are like, fat and these big arms and the shoulders, and you're just like, man, I want that in my barn. Like, that looks like a good looking animal. Like, I want more of that. And then you see them, like, a couple of months later, you see them trying to mount a sow, and it's like, oh my goodness, he can't even get close. Like, he can't get it in. He can't find the right hole. He can't even get anywhere in the right area. And then it's super frustrating, because by that point, then it's already like, it's a hard lesson. And I've done that with my boar, so I get that. Blue Wagon says our gilts are Hereford Duroc crosses. We have 3. We bought all of the females from their litter, processed 2 of them. Great meat. Well, that's pretty cool. Secret Noise says, I think you're correct, my friend. Something raised closest these animals as they can live in nature, and they have the best quality no matter what it is. Yeah, I think some of it too is like, it's no matter how good it ever is, like, I'm always going to want to make it a little bit better, and so it's going to be, and it's a matter of trying to figure out, like, I feel like I have a pretty good genetic, I have enough pieces of the puzzle where now I need to really work through those puzzle pieces, because the good qualities of a breed are not just about, I have this breed, now I automatically have all of these good qualities. There are specific good traits within a breed, but it's breeding within the breed and combinations and pairings that you're making that are going to really isolate these traits that you want, like, let's just say intramuscular fat or color of the meat, etc. You can isolate those and bring them out. And while those may be commonly found within a certain breed, they're not just across the board guaranteed. It still comes down to the breeder to do the work of, like, pairing and culling and doing all that stuff. And, like, I have Berks here, and I've eaten some of them, and the meat is, it's fantastic. But I was a little bit like, I wanted their meat a little bit darker. And it wasn't quite as marbled as I was hoping for. I mean, it was good, but it didn't like knock my socks off. Hey, time out. Hey. What's going on, girls? Where's the fire? What are you guys doing? You came running down here like the house was on fire. I hope it's not.
It's not.
Good, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
We're playing a race.
Okay, let's not play a race like in this part of the house. Maybe play hide and seek.
Oh, wait. Hi.
But not like right here. Thanks.
Hi.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot more to breeding than, which is, it's like a Rubik's Cube type of thing. Like, you may get one side of it and it's like, oh sweet, we're getting there, and then you turn it over on the other side and it's like, man, that's not, So that's one of the things, frankly, that I enjoy so much about breeding, is that I don't feel like I'm ever going to get to a point where I feel like there's not still something left to do. I feel like there's always going to be work to do, always going to be things that I'm curious about. Like, I had my first F1 cross of the Burke and Tam, the babies that I had in the spring, and I could post some pictures of those. I've had them on some thumbnails. They're like the red and black, like the red background, black spots, and you'll see them in some of the video that I'm working on here as well. I'll hopefully post maybe middle of next week, this week, whatever we want to say, like this Wednesday. Don't hold me to that date. I'm going to try though. That's what I'm hoping for. Um, and I want to see kind of what that cross, because they grow super nice so far and they're very hardy. I want to see, and they're good looking animals. I want to see how they eat, and that's going to be the next thing. So it takes time to do that, and then you got to keep the records, and it's like there's so much more data management involved in all this stuff than what I thought. It's like, oh, I got a couple of pigs, like I know who's daddy, I know who's mommy, like this isn't that complicated. And then all of a sudden it becomes exponential, because you got a handful of mamas and a handful of daddies, and then it's like, okay, well, which one of the babies came, who came from who, and who's going where with whom to make what resulting crosses. And once you get it down in the further generations, it's like Blue Wagon said, I don't want to be one of those places where it's just a free for all and everybody's running all over the place and you don't know who's on top of who. I want it to be moderately squared away. And Lightfoot says, can't wait till Saturday. I think I was in for 3 barrows this spring. So we'll have to talk about the piglets. I mean, one way or the other, I think we can figure something out. It's going to be, if you can be a little flexible on either timing or breed or something, we'll figure it out. We'll get you 3 piglets. I'm pretty sure that somewhere in the mix there I can get somebody to, because the way I work my reservations, so if I have, let's just say I have 10 litters that I'm anticipating for the spring. The reservations that I sell in the winter in anticipation are pretty much to fund the feed until the babies arrive, and the hay and whatever. So what I'll do is I'll say if I have 10 sows that I'm pretty sure are bred, I will assume reservations based on 5 or 6 piglets per litter, so that if everybody just kind of craps the bed, or if, let's say, God forbid, I really hope this doesn't happen, but it has happened in the past where I'll lose a sow and then it's like I got a whole litter that's out of the picture, or somebody has a bad year, or somebody didn't get bred and they're going to be coming, their litter comes later, or what have you. I have some flexibility in there, so I don't know exactly how many piglets I'm going to have, but I try not to take money and deposits, because I don't want to be stuck in a situation where I'm giving money back and returning money. So I try to go relatively conservatively and say, I think I sold somewhere between 60 and 70 reservations in terms of piglets for this year. And as it turned out, I sold one group of 24, and 16 of those 24 I actually got to fulfill those reservations from the fall litters that they were able to take like a week ago. So that actually kind of gave me a little bit more wiggle room. So there's more numbers that are on my side, and we'll keep our fingers crossed, but we'll make it work. We'll figure that out. But yeah, there's always more piglets. We'll find some. We'll find some for you. But my general recommendation when it comes to breeding and or buying feeder pigs, start early and think a season ahead, so that you want to be lining up your feeder pigs for the spring. You want to be lining those up like October, November. Find the breeders that you want to work with who are doing the work, and then get out and meet them. Take a little time, because I mean, I've had to travel as far as I think probably like 5 hours is about the furthest. No, maybe 6, 7. I've gone into Pennsylvania. I shipped a boar from Wisconsin to Western New York and then picked them up there. So that there's a decent bit of driving, but it's worth it to do if you want to get good animals. And that's those are the things that I always encourage people to think about when you're going to be selling that meat, when you're going to be selling those piglets, etc. Think about what a pain in the butt it was for you to go out and get those genetics and bring them back and cultivate them. That's something that you got to factor into your pricing and your marketing, that you can stand on that and say, yeah, this is like, these are good quality genetics. This is not just, you know, run of the mill. Good night. Oh, wait, you going to bed?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, goodbye. Well, see you later. Might be more appropriate. Um, yeah, you know, where you can really market that and have that be something that really works to your favor, because you're putting in the time and effort to be able to get that, you know, get those genetics. Because ultimately, that's one of the things where, and I mean, easy for me to say, I don't know how viable this is, or maybe you've already done this. Just, I think I'm kind of talking to Blue Wagon here specifically, but to anybody, like if you have found or identified some breeders, like even in other states, or, you know, draw a circle on the map, like maybe 300 miles in any direction. Is there anybody in that circle that you could go and see? Because it's worth it to make that kind of a drive if you can get some animals that are like going to be worthwhile, and that are going to be where you actually like what you see, and you want to bring that back into your own, into your farm and what you're doing. And taking the time to build a relationship with a breeder, so that you know what you're getting and you know the quality is there, because you know the process that they put into their animals and the rigor that they put into vetting their animals, and that they take what they're doing as seriously as you take what you're doing, because you're willing to go and drive, you know, 4, 5, 6 hours to go see the breeder and see the animals and all that stuff. That they're going to be as, you know, committed, where they're also willing to do that. And those are the people that you want to buy from, because when you talk to the breeder and you hear like this is where the hoops they're having to jump through and who they're getting their breed stock from, that's a, you know, that's very telling, and that gives you a lot of information about kind of, this is the person that you're going to want to do business with or not. And, you know, finding those people is good. And then once you got them, then you know, okay, like this is, then you have it kind of locked up, because they're going to be trying to shuffle their deck to keep their products good, you know, and fresh, in the same way that you are. And you can kind of plan together, this is kind of where I'm going, this is what I want to do, this is what I need, do you have any of this, do you have any of that? And the stuff that maybe you would want to get, you can sometimes get them to help you get it and bring some of that into their operation, so that then you can get it and you don't have to go all the way out to get something from like 2 or 3 states away. They can be kind of an intermediary in that process as well. Blue Wagon says, in the end, we just wanted to make good pork available to our friends and neighbors. Taking things slowly has always been the only thing that's kept us in a good position. Totally agree with that. I have yet another video that I'm working on about kind of a flip side to the video that maybe is how everybody here found me originally, because the one big video that blew up for me last June was about the USDA, and the email from the guy who like wanted to know like, hey, do you like, how do you slaughter your pigs? And I went on a big rant about the USDA stuff and how that crushes small farms' ability to sell pork. I'm making a kind of a flip side video about, here's the way or the principles that I would really pay attention to if you want to make money off of your farm, specifically tailored to folks that are going from homesteading to farming and are trying to bridge that gap and how to think about it. And I think that Blue Wagon, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like the short version of it is, do it slow enough that you can do it profitably, and you get into trouble when you're trying to like get ahead of a trend or catch up to a trend, or it's like, oh, somebody's looking for piglets, well, let me get a couple more breeders in here and I'm going to do this, and I can't really, you know, fully manage it, but as long as this pay, like when you bet, that saying, you bet the farm on something, it's like you can't really carry it if something goes wrong, but if it all goes right, you can actually do really well. And there's these arrangements where the market fluctuates, or a lot of times you get a big buyer who comes in and they're swinging a lot of cash around. They're asking for a big number of animals, and it's like, man, if I could get this guy every year and I knew I had a guaranteed buyer who's going to be putting up those kind of numbers, I could work with that, and I could really build something that'll be nice and easy on my end. And boy, that's real dangerous, because you say yes to stuff that sounds really good when there's a deposit looking at you, and then when you have to go the distance to get from the deposit to collecting the remainder of the payment, and then you're dealing with the ass end of all of that responsibility and the logistics and the management, and things that go wrong. Murphy's Law. I've been fortunate to not get too far out in front of my skis, but I've leaned out there a little bit, enough to where I've kind of taken some hard lessons, and my point of encouragement is like, go real slow, because every time you think that it's like you got it by the short and curlies and you're on top of it, and then you say, okay, based on that, I'm going to expand a little bit. But then when you expand, you're not playing the same game anymore, because like there are certain inflection points where you go from, and I don't know where those inflection points fall on like larger scales, but I can tell you that for me, it was somewhere around like from 6 to 10. When you made that jump from like 6 to 10 animals, it was a different ball game. And so all of the things that have been going so well with my 6 animals that encouraged me to go get 4 more, it's like, well, now I have my 4 more, but I'm playing a different game than the game that I was playing before, that everything was going really well. Or, I kind of was focused on breeding, and then somebody comes along and they make me a real attractive offer in terms of doing pork. And it's like, well, I could do both. I mean, it's all pigs. I mean, pigs are pigs. Kind of feed these guys, feed those guys. Like, we'll just kind of, And I did that for a year, made some okay returns, but I lost a lot of my momentum in terms of where I was going with breeding, because I got sidetracked chasing a buck doing the pork. All told, it was a good experience because I learned a lot, made a good connection, and now I am working in a different capacity with this particular buyer who's making fantastic products, and I think she's got a great business model that is aggregating pork from small pork producers locally to create volume, but without sacrificing quality by having to go to like the confinement feedlot type of thing, but rather having like mass homesteaders feeding into her business or into her production. And I think that's an interesting concept of like crowdsourcing high quality livestock and pork. I love it. But I've kind of taken more of a, okay, I'm not going to be your feeder finisher guy. I'm going to be, I'll produce the breed stock for you. I'll make the different combinations, and I'll make sure you got the piglets that you need. But I'm going to try to really put my focus on, because I mean, I'm going to finish a few of my own, and I'll finish a few here and there because I got customers that want to buy 1 or 2, here and there. I mean, hell, last year we sold, last year I guess we sold about 10 that were ours. We sold like half of them kind of went to her. That was like a big group, big for me. It's a group of 8 that went out for her, and then the other like 10-ish, those were for my customers, so people who are buying half and whole hogs and getting them custom processed. But those are like one at a time, so it's not like a logistical thing. It's a lot more like, okay, this week looks good, we'll do one here, we'll do one next month, we'll do one kind of wherever it works out. There's not like a push to get them finished. It's like everybody gets fed together, and when they're ready to go, they're ready to go, and that's that. It's a lot simpler than when it's like, okay, you have to have this group of 8 ready to go on this day. That's when the truck's going to be here in the trailer, and you got to have them loaded and ready, and they got to be big enough to make weight that's a lot more logistic. Like you have to have them separated, and you have to really be putting the feed to them and really be focusing on that in a way that you wouldn't, like you can't have them with your breed stock if you're doing that, because like the way that you're feeding them is going to be much more aggressive and would make, you know, undesirable weight gain with your breed stock. That so you got to separate them out, and then when you have separate groups, the more separation and the more different groupings that exist, the more, you know, work you have and more stress as well. Oh, Mike says, unrelated, but I'm seeing you gain a few more subs. 29 more to go to 1,000. All right. Well, for those of you who might not have heard my initial announcement there, whoever predicts the date on which we get the 1,000th subscriber, I will send mail. If you're around and local, you can come pick up one of these lovely, I don't know if the lighting gets it there, the Rowan Ridge Farm coffee cups, ceramic, heavy duty, Sunset Hill stoneware. I'd show you the bottom of the mug, but I don't want to dump it over on myself and the floor, so I'll just take my word for it. Nice mugs, and whoever guesses that date, that's going to be our like celebration, and I can send that out to you for free. These are pretty nice mugs. I'm happy with them. So yeah, I'm excited to cross that threshold to get to 1,000 and then kind of see where things go from there. So, well, good. So guys, I'm assuming based on what I'm seeing in the chat, I know a lot of you here are subbed to the channel. Anybody who has made it this far into the stream or the video, if you are not already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so, because it is like quality assurance. It gives me some feedback that says, hey, what you're doing is actually making things work and we want more of it. So it's like, what would you call it? Not quality assurance. Yeah, it's feedback. It's good customer feedback. It lets me know that we're heading in the right direction and that you're interested in what we're doing. I'm looking forward to doing more of these live streams. Like I mentioned, probably a handful of times already. I've got the winter pigs video, just kind of going in depth and actually showing you guys a little bit about how we manage some of the more challenging aspects of cold weather here on the farm with the pigs, as well as I threw in a little chalk talk on some biosecurity stuff because I was getting dressed and putting my boots on. I figured, you know, I'll talk a little bit about biosecurity, so for folks that don't think about that maybe as just a point of reference. And then I have another video coming out about, or that I'm working on, about making money in 2026. And like I mentioned earlier, kind of bridging that gap, going from homestead to farming, trying to make a little money out of it. And then I'm going to have another video that I'm going to try to shoot here shortly, which will be about if I started over in 2026, here are the things that I would do differently, and here are the things that I'm really glad that I did. So kind of trying to lay the groundwork for folks that are, you know, getting started and that are new to this. And, you know, anybody watching, if there's things that you want to see videos about that you are interested in, questions, comments, like if you've been around the channel a little bit, you'll know that when I get questions and comments, that's what I use to make my videos. And I will point out here, I will shamelessly plug the memberships for the channel. So channel memberships on YouTube, kind of like a super chat, only it's a monthly thing, and it's kind of like a built-in Patreon. I hate Patreon because I used to have a Patreon, previous YouTube channel, former life, when I was a filmmaker, and Patreon is very ideologically captured, and so if they don't like what you're talking about, they'll just completely like yoink and remove your entire thing. Of course, YouTube does the same thing, so I mean, whatever. But YouTube has channel memberships built in. Mr. Lightfoot is the single member on the channel right now. We have two levels. The base level is, I think, $2.99, and then there's one for $9.99. And pretty much what I want to start doing is making more member content. And I think this is going to be more practically relevant as the channel grows and there's more comments and questions and I have to kind of start sorting through and prioritizing, I want to be able to focus on the people that are more invested and interested in what I'm doing. And so channel memberships are a way that you guys can support some of what I'm doing here at a very relatively low, probably less than a cup of coffee actually, given what coffee costs. And if you guys like what we're doing here, obviously liking the stream to help the algorithm boost it, sub into the channel, and then channel memberships and stuff like that. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing and kind of building out to get caught up, but this is a one-man band right now in terms of the creative side of the YouTube. But I'm looking forward to really pushing this ball down the field as we hopefully bring in more people to this community and way of thinking about farming, and of course pigs, because I love pigs. If I didn't love pigs, I couldn't do this. Blue Wagon says, you've been a great resource. Thank you. I appreciate that vote of confidence, and I appreciate the content. Thank you for the chat tonight. Thank you, chat. I appreciate that from you. Oh, and I think you'll hit 1K subs tomorrow. From your lips to God's ears. There will be a lot of people off work after the storms. Plenty of internet surfing. That's a valid point. I like that. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. So, cool. Anybody else have anything to close things out here before I start pulling the ripcord? I know it's funny, like whenever I'm about to close things out, that's always when like the questions and the comments start rolling in. I'm like, oh boy, well, and then we wind up going for another hour, which I don't hate. I actually enjoyed kind of an earlier start time tonight. I might finish before the stroke of midnight and I turn into a pumpkin here. All right. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys taking your time, sharing some of your weekend here with us. And like I said, we'll have videos coming out over the next couple of weeks. I always appreciate your support on the videos, anything you can do. And also feedback, comments, questions, that kind of stuff. Keep the conversation going, because that's kind of what motivates me with this. I like knowing that the information that I'm giving people, the conversations that I'm having, that I'm not just talking to myself and the pigs and the rats in the barn, but that actually people are getting something out of this. That means a tremendous amount, believe it or not. It really helps keep me motivated to keep doing this stuff. I hope you guys all stay warm and don't get too carried away shoveling driveways and plowing stuff out, and stay safe, stay warm, and look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. And on that note, sayonara.